Welcome to the Real Estate Masters Podcast, where we interview the top names in the real estate game. If you want to grow your real estate business, see more podcasts, or get free resources, go to www.remcommunity.com. The only podcast that allows you to directly connect with the guests and many of the highest level names in the real estate game.
You are in for a treat with our next guest. Do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and don't forget to go to remcommunity.com to connect with some of the highest level real estate professionals in the United States through our community and through our high level masterminds. Let's go.
Welcome to today's show. Today we have Colin Murphy. I am your host, Tony Javier. Colin is out of the Tampa Bay area. He's done over 350 real estate transactions. Is getting ready to go remote, I believe. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Colin, good to have you on the show today. And thanks for jumping on and agreeing to share your wealth of knowledge with our community.
My pleasure, Tony. It's good to be here.
So tell us exactly how you got started. People love hearing people's stories on how they got started in real estate. So we'd love to hear how you got started and kind of fast forward us to today with what you're doing in your real estate investing business.
Sure, I'm happy to, and I've had a very meandering real estate journey, like many people have. I'm originally from Ireland, but I now live in Tampa, Florida. I'm 41 years old, and I've been a full-time real estate investor since my mid-20s. I started out in London, England, and my first kind of foray into real estate was actually selling advertising space in real estate magazines and showroom space for real estate exhibitions. And this would have been back in 2003, 4, 5, where a lot of your listeners might remember was that previous real estate boom, before the Great Recession, 4 or 5 years later. And after like a few years of that kind of work hard, play hard game in London, where I got to travel the world, I got to meet a lot of investors, builders, realtors, currency people, literally traveling a lot to Eastern Europe and to South America and over to Florida. I got offered a post in Ireland to open up this office in Dublin, Ireland for a British company that was promoting real estate mostly in Eastern Europe and Central America. So I opened an office in Dublin in 2007, and hired a bunch of people, got a fancy office, had the receptionist, the marketing person, the admin person, a couple of salespeople, and started doing the evening seminars and putting adverts in newspapers and all this old school stuff that nobody does anymore to drum up interest in people investing in real estate overseas. And the Irish had a huge passion for investing in real estate back then, and were very willing to target all sorts of second and third tier markets when the first tier markets were just getting too expensive. So, business was good for about 2 years. And then, between March 08 when Bear Stearns collapsed and September 08 when Lehman Brothers went down, my business kind of went down as well. Demand just evaporated for what I was selling. I had to, let loads of people go and close an office and basically dust myself down and start from scratch with, a couple of $1,000 in the bank. And this was, fast forward to like early 2009, I set up a firm called Torcana with 2 others. And we started selling Florida condos to Irish and British buyers. And that went really well at the time. There was still quite a large amount of cash buyers that were willing to buy real estate for 30 cents on the dollar. These beautiful gated community condos that were selling for like $240, $250, and they were now, retailing for 80 or 90 with tenants in place paying $1,000. So that went quite well for quite a few years, for about 3-4 years. And then that kind of low hanging fruit started going away. And we used to be selling kind of B quality stuff for less than $100,000. And then you got to kind of C- and borderline D quality for, mid hundreds. So we just kind of pivoted again and decided to pool our money and start doing a few fix and flips in early 2014. And this was in Tampa, Florida. We did that, and we just started scaling it up and up and up until we got to about 100 flips a year in kind of 2019, before we pivoted again for the pandemic. But we had quite a few good years there.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, cool journey. People, I think probably have the same stories as an entrepreneurial journey. You start something, you do really well, you kind of start growing, and then you get knocked off your rocker for a little bit. Right. And then you just got to figure out how to pivot, get back up, and then figure something out. But you could probably attest to this, that, at the time it probably sucked, but, looking back, I imagine that you probably came back bigger and stronger, which it sounds like. And a lot of people don't understand that when they get kind of, pushed down, that 9 times out of 10, I hear that most people come back bigger and stronger. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah, 100%. And, if you can just try and develop that resilience, you're going to do yourself a huge favor in terms of your future chances of success. I think resilience is more important than intelligence or luck. I mean, in my opinion, you don't need to be super intelligent or lucky to do well in real estate, but you certainly do need resilience to weather all the ups and downs that the market's going to throw at you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about what you're doing now. So you're in Tampa, Florida. You shared with me that you're looking to get your business automated enough to where you can move out of the country. So tell us where you are in that process, what you plan on doing with that, and tell us why you want to do that.
I'm pretty advanced in that process. I'm literally moving to Madrid, Spain in less than a month, so everything is more or less organized. The removal company are scheduled. We have a home in Spain already. I had an open house in my own home. We're looking at my home office, and obviously it was just crazy, and sold the same day. And yeah, I've taken a lot of steps to automate things. I mean, but I have experience in it as well, Tony, because, I lived in Madrid, Spain from 2005 to 2016, and I was investing in real estate during most of that period. And I had local business partners that were doing the on-the-ground project management and the on-the-ground closing coordinating and admin and, client viewings and all the rest of it. So I had a bit of experience doing it. And obviously technology has changed and automation has changed, and now I'm still, pretty much a fix and flipper, slightly smaller volume than I used to do, but still, generally 2 or 3 houses a month now, which is, it's not easy just to get that many in such a tight inventory market, to be honest with you, but I'm still doing that. And I have some good systems in places for, people drawing up renovation scopes, the inspections beforehand, the video walkthroughs, the photos, the private lending, the real estate attorneys that have power of attorney to sign documents on my behalf, for buying and selling houses and, putting on and releasing mortgages. That's very important. Having a good CPA here and overseas, giving you advice on what to do to avoid paying, 60% tax on everything, because a lot of good stuff about living in Europe, but the tax environment isn't one of them. So you need to be properly structured for that. But it's an adventure. I'm sure I'm going to make some mistakes on the first year or two before I figure out. I'm sure I'll make some expensive mistakes. I'm sure I'll end up buying a house or two that I might not have bought if I was still living in Tampa. But I'm happy to give it a go. I think that the Tampa market and the Florida market is a fantastic real estate market. I have a lot of kind of deep experience in it over the last 10, 15 years. And nowadays there's no reason to give that up just because you're living on the other side of the world. If you have good teams of people in place, and obviously you need a very wide team of people. If you're going to be a fix and flipper, you need a huge team of people, from the general contractors to the painters, the roofers, the AC guys, the landscapers, the property managers, the utility people. There's loads of inner and outer circle people that you need organized, and it's a lot easier to do that if you're on the ground for many years before you leave. But anything is doable. It's a lot easier to be a buy and hold investor remotely, I guess, but if you're fix and flipper, it's not for the faint-hearted. I remember in the early days we fixed and flipped a couple of properties in Charlotte, North Carolina, based in Tampa, Florida, and it was a huge pain. I mean, we barely got out of there alive, just trying to flip something that was 1,000 miles away. But we've learned a bit since then.
Well, I'll tell you one thing for me, moving from Wichita, Kansas, I moved to Tampa for a year and then San Diego, but being removed from the business forces you to look at things at a higher level. So even though some people may go, man, that's crazy. And even before I learned the concept of not visiting properties and doing that kind of thing, I thought it was crazy not being able to go to properties or not meeting with sellers and that kind of thing. But it forces you again to work on your team more, to look at the higher level operations of the business, and it helps you become a better business person. So you've already done it once. What are your thoughts on that, being removed from the business and doing deals in other places? I imagine that you would probably concur that it helps you to kind of think of it more from a business perspective and not necessarily just from an overall or, kind of like details operational perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart insight, and I think you're absolutely correct. And a lot of the things that you might consider negatives about being away from it all can actually be flipped into positives. One of the ones is that you don't use tons of your time in a car just driving around all your houses. That's something you can pay somebody else to do. That's 15, 20, $30 an hour task, and you can use your own time for much higher value ones. And just even being in Madrid, Spain, and having at least 6 hours of quiet work before your phone is even going to ring is just wonderful, because there's how many business owners are out there where their phone just doesn't stop ringing and doesn't give them 10 minutes to think about anything. So just be having that peace and quiet in the mornings to plan out stuff and strategize and plan out your cash flow, catch up on your bookkeeping, and tweak your goals, and decide, is this a smart thing to do, and what do I need to buy, what questions do I need to ask this person about each property. Like I say, you can turn a lot of those so-called negatives into positives, and by the time Florida is waking up, you might have a list of instructions for 10 or 12 people that can do that running around and do all that labor intensive work for you, and you're just doing the high level stuff, which is basically deciding how best to allocate your capital.
Yeah. So tell us how you, well, I guess you said you did it before. I was going to ask you how you got your vision for being able to operate your business from afar, but you said you've done it before. You bought properties in places you haven't been before. But why did you choose Madrid, Spain? And what's your next thing? Like, obviously, when you move to, like, for me, when I moved to San Diego, or actually I moved to Tampa first, I tried flipping out there. It wasn't quite the market I wanted to be in, so I ended up moving to San Diego. And so when I moved to San Diego, I had to think of, like, what's the next thing? Obviously I had the flipping business. It was automated. I didn't have to spend a lot of time on it. So I kept looking for the next thing, and I've started multiple businesses since then. So for you, moving to Madrid, Spain, why did you move there? And then what's your next thing that you're looking to do within your career?
I mean, Madrid, the reason is very simple. I'm married to a woman who's born in and grew up in Madrid, Spain, and that's as good a reason as any to live in Madrid, Spain, aside from the great food and culture and climate and all the rest of it. And I loved living in Madrid, Spain for many years, even though I had to struggle for many years just to learn how to speak Spanish in a way that I was understood and figure out what other people were talking about is a long haul, but very worthwhile endeavor. So living in Madrid, Spain, because my wife is from there, and even my kids were born in Madrid, Spain. I mean, they're basically American now, but they were born in Madrid, Spain. And the next thing for me, aside from the fix and flipping, which I'm going to continue to do, I'm doing it with land instead. At the beginning of the year, I started figuring out how to buy vacant land and flip vacant land and create owner finance notes through doing that. And that's, as you can imagine, if you're buying a piece of unimproved vacant land for, say, $10,000, and then you're able to sell it to someone else for 25 or 28 with a 10,000 deposit and owner finance over 5 years of $700 a month, there's a lot less moving parts to that than trying to renovate a bunch of kitchens and bathrooms and roofs and pool enclosures and all the rest of it. So that was my idea of, I'll continue the fix and flip houses because I've had all these crews and all these great people that I've done hundreds of deals with. But if I'm going to be based permanently overseas or for many years overseas, what else could I do that is very interesting? And vacant land was one of them. So I started, a marketing campaign back in February, March, just mailing thousands of absentee owners of vacant land, sending them blind offers, offering them a percentage of the tax value of the land, basically. And that's actually worked out surprisingly well, and was able to hit the ground reasonably quickly. And it's one of those great things. If you're used to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on houses, it doesn't feel that risky spending tens of thousands of dollars on some land, and you can actually create quite nice little passive income streams out of it.
And are you doing that just in Tampa, or are you doing that in other markets as well?
It's something you could do anywhere. I mean, anywhere in Florida and most states. I just started doing it in 2 counties in the Tampa Bay area, Pasco County and Hernando County, which are just north, about 30 minutes and 45 minutes north of downtown Tampa, and there's a little bit less competition from other wholesalers and other people mailing. The main part of Tampa is Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, which are more densely populated urban areas, which with much more expensive land and more intense competition from builders and so on. So I'm starting in the more suburban and borderline kind of, rural areas.
And what are people buying that land for when you own or finance it to them? Are they, excuse me, are they putting mobile homes on it? Are they building houses? What are they typically doing with those properties?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example of one I just closed a few weeks ago, if you like, where I bought, 1.3 acres of land in Pasco County for $12,500.
Wow.
And I advertised it on land.com. I mean, the MLS, funnily enough, doesn't generate a lot of interest for vacant land, but land.com does, and it might filter it out to a bunch of other websites from there. And you're just advertising the lifestyle. There's people that want land for hunting, for recreation, for camping, for mobile homes, just off the grid people. I mean, there's all sorts of folks that want to buy land. In that case, I managed to sell it to a local person in Tampa. I think he had a landscaping business, and he just went through a divorce, and they sold the house, and he had some money, and he just wanted a piece of land where he could put a mobile home and plant a bunch of vegetables. And he bought it from me for $30,000 with a $12,500 deposit. So that's all my initial capital back, and then a note of the remaining $17,500 over 5 years at 7.5% interest. That was about $750 a month.
Wow, good for you. That's some good numbers right there. People do those. People typically do those numbers with mobile homes. So doing them with the land is even better, because then you don't have a mobile home to deal with. So that's amazing. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. And my deal is, well, if I can get, I'm on my, I think, 7th lot at the moment. I haven't sold them all, but I've sold a few, and I'm kind of, some of them I don't do the owner finance, some of them I will, but I'm figuring if I can get 10 or 20 of those $750 a month going, that's a very significant passive income stream that, I mean, it will end in 3, 5, 6 years, but it's still quite significant, and it's far less time intensive or labor intensive than trying to manage a bunch of rentals, because there's no maintenance, there's no repairs, there's no property managers. You're literally just getting this ACH money into your account, and you're a lender, really, which is a nice place to be.
And I'm sure there's less competition because everyone's mailing the same, homeowner list. So to mail vacant landowners, I imagine that's way less competition than traditional real estate investing.
It is. And don't get me wrong. I mean, you have to throw a lot of darts here. You still have to send, I mean, I was sending, I think 500 a week, which is not much compared to what some folks are doing, but it's enough. And then you're kind of offering maybe 20 or 30% of the tax value of the land. And a lot of people will get annoyed at it. Some people will, I have those prepaid envelopes. Some people will send back rude notes in those envelopes, or send back just scrap from a magazine in them. But every now and again, you get, somebody will literally sign a contract and send it straight back to you, or ring you up and say, I'm not selling it for 10,000, but I might talk to you about 14, and you're off to the races.
So you're physically sending in the offer. So if something's tax valued at 10 grand, you're offering them 3 grand, let's say. And then you're sending a prepaid or a pre-stamped envelope so they can just send the offer back.
I'm sending them a signed contract where they just have to sign beside my name, and I'm sending a prepaid envelope where they just have to pop it back in, and it's free to mail back anywhere in the US.
Interesting. That's a
Which
good
is a real
strategy.
pain to set up.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a good strategy, but I'm sure
USPS.
I'm going to say, it's probably pretty expensive to do it that way, because you have to stamp envelopes. Because you're actually doing a physical stamp.
No, you're not stamping. No, you're not stamping it. It's there's a lot of bureaucracy to get that done through United States Postal Service. But once you're sending all these letters, they don't have an actual stamp on them, and I only get charged for people that actually use them, that actually put them in a mailbox. So,
is it like a meter?
I have a business account with USPS. I have a special code in all of those envelopes and a barcode. And anytime that gets in the mail, that barcode gets scanned, and I'll get billed, the 40 cents or whatever it is.
Gotcha. That's genius. I like that. That's probably a good strategy for residential real estate investors too, if they want to implement that somehow. Well, good stuff. So let's talk about automation again real quick. So what are some key things that you had to do to get things where you were comfortable with making that leap to moving to Spain?
Okay, so what do I need? So, you need to be on lots of wholesaler lists. Obviously, you need to be getting lots of emails and lots of SMSs and lots of text messages. Ideally, you could have a VA, a virtual assistant, tracking that for you and alerting you to any properties that meet some criteria you've identified previously. You need some sort of service where you can get text messages and phone calls overseas without actually having a physical phone and paying a fortune. In my case, I use a product called Ring Central, which has quite a lot of sophisticated kind of call center type options. I buy in a pretty well-defined area. It's literally only about 15 miles north to south and 3 miles east to west. So I generally have people renovating houses or doing work in that area. And if I get a hot lead, I'm sending a message to somebody saying, can you drive over here, take a quick look at it, let me know if there's any structural issues. I've got lots of photos, so I can review all those photos. I know what it costs to renovate. I have fixed costs for all these block single family cookie cutter houses. So I know what it's going to cost me, pretty much just by looking at the photos. I only need to make sure that there's no structural issues with the home. And you just generally need to be really, in today's market, you need to be really quick. I mean, I've got offered deals at 9 in the morning and I'm sending them non-refundable deposits at 9:20 in the morning just to lock them up. And then you need to be able to, line up private lenders who are going to send money, where a real estate attorney is going to sign, mortgage documents and purchase agreements on your behalf. And it's not, I mean, to be honest with you, it's not that different. I don't drive to a lot of the houses now, just being at my house in Tampa. So the time difference is going to be a big one. I'm going to try and have to educate everybody to try and do what they need to do with me before lunchtime. That's going to be a big one. But just having your kind of Rolodex of property inspectors, photographers, cleaners, GCs, all those guys on call that will jump when they're given an instruction is key to any business, but it applies just as much to kind of a overseas kind of presence as a local presence. But in terms of pure kind of automation and checklists and things like that it's outsourcing those $10 and $15 an hour tasks is key. Stuff like the sourcing, pulling down the information, the beds, baths, the permit records, the year bills, the links to the photographs, getting closing coordinators to move the things towards closing and deal with the other lenders and title agents and realtors, having a property inspector that has an exact list of criteria to do for me that I specifically need to know to make my decisions, having general contractors who work to fixed templates at fixed prices, kitchens are this much, bathrooms are this much. That's all key. And there's generally a lot of heavy lifting and arguments involved in getting to that point. But I'm sure I still have a lot to learn about automation. I'm sure you could probably teach me a lot about it. I still do a lot of juggling that I probably don't need to.
So what it comes down to really is people and systems, right? Good systems that you run in your business to where when something happens, what needs to be done, and then also good people to run it and people that you trust on your team that are employees, subcontractors, and all that good stuff that can help you, right? So if you have those two things in place, that makes your life a lot easier.
I think I need to work more on, I have the great team of people, I have that down and they're all super responsive, but I do need to work a bit more probably on systemizing it so that I'm not quite as much a bottleneck in every little place as I probably am.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, let's wrap this up. So I guess, being in the business, how long you've been in real estate, can you share with us some things that you think would be good to share from a standpoint of just lessons learned, things that maybe happened, either positive or negative, that impacted you and your business that you learned from, that you think the listeners could learn a lot from as well?
Yeah, a few kind of general tips that'll help anybody. The first, general piece of advice: get up early in the mornings. If you can start your day 45 minutes of quiet time just to pray, meditate, review your goals, read a thought-provoking book, I think you'll become a much calmer person and better able to handle all the stressful kind of curveballs that come at you, but also better able to respond to opportunities that come your way. I think you need that kind of calmness that only comes from having a quiet start to the day, in my experience. Mm-hmm. Second thing that's very necessary to achieve any kind of scale or kind of organization in real estate is to have the habit of, and it sounds very obvious, Tony, but just have the habit of tracking your income and expenses, every month, just for your own household, for your rentals, for your business. And I think if more people spend 3 or 4 hours a month, it's not a huge amount of time, just 3 or 4 hours a month building and reviewing their personal balance sheets, their P&L statements, they'd have more reserves for rainy days. They'd find it a lot easier to buy stuff and just accumulate wealth and the cash flow, just because you need to be on top of that stuff, which is not as time intensive as people might think. Action oriented mindset, super important. You don't make any progress unless you take action, gain experience. Some people are always trying to wait for the market conditions to change in their favor. There's just no point in doing that, in my opinion. You set your own parameters, and if something meets them, you dive into it and learn from your mistakes. And if you don't have that healthy attitude to risk, I think you'll probably end up working for somebody that has, because they're the people that get things done. In terms of mistakes I've made, I didn't really get successful until I went deep. I spent too many years going wide, literally selling or trying to sell real estate, not just all over the US, but all over the world. And for many, many years, it was just a total stressful scramble to get $3,000 or $4,000 a month to pay the mortgage and cover a few bills. And it was really only when we focused on, let's target a small area, let's become experts in this area, let's become experts in this type of properties, let's get people that can help us to renovate these types of houses and then build it up. The only thing you need to do is make sure there's more crews involved and more people that can lend you money to do it. And that was a huge just game changer. Just go deep before you go wide. And there's nothing wrong with going wide after you've gone deep. If there's other people in there continuing what you've started, that's great. But don't try and renovate properties in 3 or 4 different markets. I would advise you to get good at a couple of towns or sections of towns first and take it from there.
Cool. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing those learning lessons. A lot of things you could share. I'm sure there's more, but how can people get a hold of you? If people want to get a hold of you, get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Website is the easiest place. It's colininvestments.com. That's COLIN investments.com. I also have a real estate podcast. It's just simply called Colin Podcasts About Real Estate. You'll find that on all the usual Spotify and Apple and Google podcast sites. And you can contact me through the website. I set aside time every week to chat to people about their real estate goals. I've written a number of reports that are free to download, and I posted a bunch of videos and interviews with interesting people in there, and always happy to chat to people about where they are, especially about real estate.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, thanks again, Colin. Congrats on the success, and good luck to you and your wife and your kids with the move to Madrid. I'm sure that's going to be a big change, but at the same time, you lived there before and she's from there, so it may not be as big as I'm thinking, but nonetheless, when you move countries, it's still a pretty big deal.
It's stressful relocating, but yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Cheers.
All right, thanks, man. Thanks for listening. Now go to www.remcommunity.com to connect with today's guest, see our high-level masterminds, and to get free resources. Don't forget to share this with a friend and leave us a 5-star review. We'll see you on the next episode.